These type of bins, we sell these at the farmers markets, are quite a bit expensive, but even so, when you think that once you've bought your seeding of worms in your box, they're going to last forever, it's still a quite small investment when you think of you're contributing to reducing the amount of greenhouse gas, because otherwise, if you're not converting your rubbish into soil, it's going to landfill, it's creating methane gas, and it's making a serious impact on the global warming. Because methane is, we all understand that carbon dioxide is a big problem, but methane heats up 21 times more than carbon dioxide, so the methane is a real problem. And they've done studies in Canada to say that if we were to put all of our rubbish converted into worm castings, we could reduce the global warming effect by up to 70% just by everyone doing the right thing with their rubbish. So it's a way that people can actually make a difference without having to spend a lot of money. And what we find is a lot of people finish up treating their worms as pets. They really get a lot of enjoyment out of growing their worms and seeing them flourish, as well as getting the really good garden material. Yes, and as pets they don't bark, they don't make a lot of noise, and you can go away and leave them for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and provide them with the food and moisture. They'll be happy there when they come back, so they're great. And the kids love them. All the kids now are getting taught in schools the importance of worms and composting and recycling our material. And it's a great way to just keep it at the forefront of the minds of people that it's, global warming, and this is not just a government problem, it's a whole society problem. We've all got to do our bit. This is another very simple way of getting a worm farm started. You can probably get one of these for nothing from your local fruiterer, and we just make sure that you put 3 or 4 holes in the bottom so it's well drained. For people that are looking to breed up their worms quickly, what I do with these boxes is I'll put 2,000 worms in there, put some horse manure in, probably a layer of about 3 inches, and using that doubling number, I can find that in 12 months' time I'm going to have 100,000 worms in here. But for the people that are interested in making the worm tea, put your 2,000 worms in there, leave it for 2 months, take half of the worms out, put it in another box, and then you've got 2 boxes. Another 2 months, divide them in half again, and you've got 4 boxes. So you can quickly start making enough worm castings to make your worm tea that you can, if you're on 100, 200 acres, from very small, inexpensive start, you can be making enough base material to fertilise your own farm without ever going near the chemical fertilisers. This box here is called a never fill worm bin and composter. It acts as both a composting bin and a worm farm. And the way it works is you just put it on bare ground, preferably under a shady tree. And the beauty of this one, whereas with the plastics you can only feed a small amount of food in at a time, you can happily throw your whole bucket full of veggie scraps in there, plus all your newspapers, cardboard, Wheatie boxes, Salada biscuit boxes, all those sort of things. And if it does create heat, the worms can then just get down into the ground underneath until it cools off. They quickly come back in and start processing the food. And we'll have a look at one of those in operation in a few minutes. But to me, for people that have any sort of backyard and a bit of space and a little bit of shade, they're by far the best type. And we'll show you how we actually build one of those in a few minutes as well. Whilst we're in this area, there's a couple of other things that people could be interested in. This is a simple little bit of drainage pipe with holes drilled in it. We call it a worm tower. For people that may be in a new housing estate, they're just starting to get their garden going, and they might be on ground that's almost pure clay or sandy down near the beach. The idea with these is that you dig a hole and you actually bury that in the ground, put probably 500 worms in there, then you can start putting your food scraps in there. They all process it the same as with the other worm farms, and then as you throw water into there, the nutrients will spread, the worms will wander in and out, drop their castings in the area around it, so you'll turn that clay soil into rich soil very, very quickly. When it finally is filled up, you can just take it up and put it in another spot. So gradually you're building up and you're fertilising, changing your poor quality soil into rich soil in a very short matter of time, and all you're using is a small number of worms and your own waste food scraps. Yes, that'd be an ideal spot for the fruit tree or anywhere in the garden that you like.
Do you have to bury it, or?
Well, you need to have it. I would say you're going to reduce the effect of it because if it's sticking up out of the ground, it's also chances of it being small, it's going to get too hot. So it really is designed to be in the ground. Another thing that we're finding is very popular is our doggy poo bins. These are basically just a 20-litre can with a lid where I've drilled a series of holes in the bottom, the side, and once again you make a hole in your garden, set that in it. You can do it with a smaller size bin so you don't have to dig as big a hole, or you can just have it 3/4 in the ground. Put your worms in the bottom. What we recommend is you actually put a few food scraps in there for a start, then put your doggy poo in there and they will convert that into vermicast. Eventually, when that gets full, you will find, because the worms are top feeders, they're in the top 3 or 4 inches of the contents of the bucket. So with a fork or with some gloves on, just take the top, most of the worms out of the top, empty the finished vermicast onto your garden. By this time it's totally healthy, and put the worms back in and you can perhaps start another spot. We do sometimes, people come to us and look querious about the fact, because they've heard on a television show or in a magazine that you don't put dog poo or cat poo in your compost, and the magazine, and that's quite right. If you're just using it as compost, the problem is with that sort of animal that they, especially if they've allowed outside, they may have picked up a dead bird or a dead mouse or something like that, and there may well be pathogens in their manure. So if you're only going into compost, the risk is that those pathogens will breed, and then you've got the risk of being transferred to human beings in the compost. However, if it's vermicompost and worm compost, the worms have the unique ability of neutralising the pathogens and totally overwhelming them with the healthy bacteria, so you can do that quite safely. But it must be worm compost, otherwise don't put your doggy poo just into your normal compost.
Now David, if dogs are given a worm product to get rid of intestinal worms, what sort of effect would that dog poo have on the worms?
Good question, Hugo. That would have a disastrous effect on the worms actually, because the chemical that is killing the worms inside the animal, when it passes through them, is going to kill the worms in the bin as well. So it's a good point you made. If you've just given your dog or cat a worm tablet, then you need to collect that manure and keep it aside for at least, to be on the safe side, 2 or 3 weeks. And by that time the chemical will have leached away, and then you can put it back in. Or you might want to, just be totally safe, just bury that somewhere else. But apart from the 2 or 3 days while the chemical's going through the system of the dog or the cat, any of the other time it's quite safe. But that's a good point, that the chemicals will kill the compost worms the same as they kill the worms inside the dog or the cat.